All right. Hi there, everyone. My name is Tafsir. I'm part of Medmentor, and today we are taking our weekly Medmentor clinic where we go through your questions that you have regarding the medicine application process, how med school life is like, stuff to do with interviews, personal statement, extracurriculars, and studying in general, tips like that as well. This Insta Live that we're doing is on our Medmentor channel, but we're also doing our clinic live on our website on medmentor.co.uk. We're also doing it on Twitter. We're also on YouTube, and so feel free to join us wherever is best for you. If you have questions, which is what we're here for, please drop them below either in the comment section or in the question cards. What I'll do is I'll go through them individually, and I'll try my best to answer them as we have done in the previous few weeks. We're here every week on Saturday at 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. And a few of you guys have joined us before. Hi everyone. I can see you guys. I think it's so feel free to drop your questions below, and I'll try my best to answer them. All right. So before I do start, a bit of background on me. I'm a final year medical student at UCL. So I've been in medical school for now my 6th year. I was and am a medical school interviewer for UCL and have been for the last 2 to 3 years. I joined Medmentor a couple of months ago because of the work that we do in trying to help potential medical students get into medical school without charging anything for it. We've got loads of blog posts up on the Medmentor website, and the clinic that we do every week, we've got past Q&A sessions recorded on our IGTV lives, so feel free to access them, and the topics that were discussed are there for you to look through as well. All right, thank you everyone for joining us. So I'm just going to have a look at if we've got any questions yet. I think something came through, but it didn't. There we go, that's fine. All right. So Yasmin, Aya, Arun, Kiana, Balaji, Chili, Kaja, Pavan, Naina, Ali, Steps, Amy Louise, you guys all joined. That's great. Cool. So the first question has come in. So yeah, you guys feel free to drop the questions so that I can answer them. And I think you should see that on screen. So the first question that's come in is, how can you reflect on your virtual work experience? Now that is a very good question, and one that I didn't think we'd ever get to answering, at least in the next 10 to 20 years. So okay, so one of the work experiences that I know that was going on last year, in the first pandemic, was the Royal College of General Practitioners. They had a work experience kind of, uh, I think, yeah, whatever the curriculum was on it, I wasn't too sure because I wasn't there. But a few of my mentees did reflect on it, and what they did is just talk about it on their personal statement about how they attended the work experience and what they took from the seminars, or from any of like the live sessions if you did have any, and basically just reflecting on it as you would a normal experience, whether that be in an extracurricular activity or a work experience in a hospital or a GP practice. So what I'd say is reflect on it as you would normally, as you would reflect on what any work experience you would. You just obviously would mention that it was virtually, and that is definitely credited by all the med schools right now, because obviously it's so hard to come by experience in such difficult circumstances. Ali, I don't know if there's anything more specific I could add to that, because I'm not too wary of it and I haven't done the work experience myself. If any of you guys have done virtual work experiences, if you want to drop a comment down below on what you took from it, it'd give us a lot more insight on what you're taking from these experiences, and hopefully you're taking a few things. Cool. All right. The next question that we have is from, let's have a look. The next question I have is from Chili Kaja. So, what ways are there to study medicine without having done chemistry A level? That's a good question. So, in the UK that I'm aware of, off the top of my head, I don't think there are any medical schools that will take you on if you haven't done chemistry at A level at year 13, kind of like undergraduate level. That's to my knowledge of most of the medical schools in the country. I'm not sure if there are exceptions to this. If there are, I'd strongly encourage you go to either the Medical Schools Council or UCAS, and have a look at the requirements for these medical schools and if they have a specific requirement for chemistry within them. There is a really good document by the Medical Schools Council that I talked about in the last Q&A session that's to do with entry requirements for all medical schools. They literally have one PDF document and it tells you all the entry requirements for every one of the 41 medical schools in the country for this coming year's entry. And I'd look through that to see if there was any. I know there's variations where like some medical schools don't mind if you have biology or maths, one or the other or neither. But from what I've seen in the past few years, chemistry has been obligatory. When it comes to postgraduate, I think I definitely have a look at what they're looking at there. They might not require chemistry A-level for some courses when you're applying for postgrad entry, so after doing a degree, but I'm not too sure about that. Sorry, Chili Kaja. But I'd encourage you to have a look on those two resources to find out in more detail. Hopefully I've answered your question to an extent. If you guys have follow-up questions, feel free to drop them below as well, which will be fine. Thank you for your questions. Cool. All right. I'm just having a look on. All right. So you guys on YouTube, on Twitter Live, and on Medmentor Live, do drop your comments or questions below on the chat so I can answer them. You're welcome, Chili Kaja. And yeah, so Medical Schools Council, medical entry requirements. That's what you need to have a look at, if that's okay. Cool. All right, what do we have next? Do we have any other questions coming? So we don't have any other questions at the moment. So in previous Q&A sessions, we've talked about personal statements. We've talked about interview type questions. A few of you guys have asked interview questions directly to me, which have been very difficult. We've gone through medical ethics questions as well, which I think everyone is always worried about. I think I'm still worried about them, and I'm in my final year of medical school. And one thing that I'd like to just say out there for everyone applying and looking at interviews is that medical ethics questions are difficult for potential medical school applicants, as well as medical students and doctors as well. And that's why the best answer at the end of an ethics question is that actually you yourself would never make that decision, but this is your opinion based on the 4 principles of medical ethics and debating for and against the points that you come across or you make. And ultimately, the decision is made by an ethics panel at a higher level, whether that's in the hospital or CCG boards or primary care networks. They have their own kind of ethics panels made up of nurses, doctors, other healthcare professionals, patients, medical legal experts. So you'll never hopefully come to making these very difficult decisions in medical ethics by yourself. It would be referred to a panel. So for example, if there was a question like, oh, you've only got one kidney for these 3 types of people, a woman in her 30s, a man in his 60s, and someone who's got a chronic disease of the kidneys, who's young, like 10 years old. So what would you do? So in scenarios like that, you can debate things, but you always got to remember to refer back to that ethics panel because they make the ultimate decision. Cool. All right. Nice. I see other people have been joining. So Nevin, Louisa, Elise, another aspiring medic. Hi there. Hi. Welcome back to the weekly session. Good to see you. Hush has joined as well. Brilliant. Okay, keep your questions coming. Great. So what I've got from Ali is, how would you answer, tell me about yourself? Okay, so that is one of the most vague opening lines to an interview. So the way tell me about yourself is very much an open, like a interview opener, right? It is kind of like trying to get you comfortable with the interview, even though it's a tricky question, and it's not the question that will definitely get you into medical school, or it will mean that you're completely out unless you say something untoward, something that's not great. So tell me about yourself is a very generic question where they're just like, okay, so so just talk about what your hobbies are, maybe. So you want to break that question down and be more specific about it, because it's very vague, and that's how you'd approach all these type of vague questions. So tell me about yourself. Is I would myself break it down to, actually, this is me, maybe personally, my personality. That's about myself, how I am. This is about myself when it comes to a professional and academic environment, and so I'm like hardworking, determined, and I've got these attributes. And then lastly, tell me about yourself, or like third point, tell me about yourself, like what do you do, what do I do in my spare time, maybe. So what my hobbies are, my interests. I like cycling, I like going swimming, things like, oh, do you play a musical instrument, like what your actual interests are. If your interests are like, I'm someone who likes to chill and like look like watch movies and things like that, and a specific genre movie or something like that, that's interesting as well. So it's just a few interests that you have. So I would break it up into those three things and maybe choose one or all three if you have the time. Ali, hopefully I've been able to answer that question for you. And if I haven't, drop me a message. Okay. Chili Kaja, if you were to do chemistry A level after doing your other A levels, do you know if that would be still accredited or accepted? So I know that most medical schools want you to sit all your A level exams in one go at the end of year 13. So that's definitely still the case, and more universities are requiring that. However, so, like half of the medical schools do allow you to retake subjects outside of those 2 year periods, or just do another subject. So I'd say go on these websites for these medical schools and have a look at what they're looking for specifically, and you have to do that research yourself. And if you're vague or unclear about things and you're about to apply to these medical schools, I'd strongly encourage you to email the admissions departments or call them up to find out specific clarification on something like that. I do know I had a mentee who did do chemistry A level but didn't get the A grade that they wanted. So then they retook it after year 13, and in that process they reapplied for medical school to these medical schools, and half of the medical schools were like, we don't take resits for A levels, and so he couldn't apply to them. But the other half were like, yeah, that's fine. You can apply to them. There's loads of med schools out there, so do have a look on that Medical Schools Council website and PDF document. Hopefully that helps you a little bit. Good luck with it all, Chili Kaja. I guess chemistry is a difficult A level to do, but it is very, very necessary. So that leads us on to our next question by Kiana. Thank you for your question. Tips on revising A level chemistry. Okay, so one thing I'd like to disclaim is that I so I did not like chemistry as a subject. The reason why I did it is because I knew it was a requirement for medical school. So I would just like, if I get through these 2 years, fine, and I get a very good grade, because that's what you need to get. You need to get A or A star. Then I'll get into med school and do the subject that I wanted to do, and actually enjoy for the rest of my life. And that was a good thing that I went to do. And I'm enjoying not doing chemistry ever since the age of 18, which was pretty nice. When it comes to actually revising chemistry A level, so I'm probably in a good position in terms of like studying for a subject that I wasn't very strong at out of my other A levels. So what I made sure to do is have multiple resources, and what I did is kind of make notes, bring together the key information from the multiple resources, and then I reviewed obviously these notes in an active recall fashion, not like every 2 weeks or something, but like before a topic test that we had in school, I'd made sure that I had my notes always ready for it, and then I was able to review it before the actual topic test. What that made me do is actually break up the 2 years, and it broke it up into like little segments of topic tests that I used to get at the end of every chapter or something, after like every couple of weeks or a month. And that made sure that I was on top of the work at all times. And that's quite important with subjects like chemistry and biology, because there's a lot of content and concepts that you need to get your head around. And if you leave it all the way until the end of year 13, you're not going to be able to do that. So what I'd say is stay on top of your work. and use active recall within that 2 year period, and use like topic tests or score like end of chapter tests or anything like, or assessments for yourself, to help you kind of work towards a goal for each chapter in each topic. And then go over, make those notes from. So I used the textbook, I used a revision guide from the exam board that I had. I also went through like any YouTube videos that were out there and used any school notes that I made. And then I compiled them by making my own notes, but that's because I'm like a note-based type of person. So I basically, in effect, made my own like revision cards or revision notes, or like my own textbook, so that I could always refer to and add to. And then lastly, what I'd say is, which is the most important with A level, is practice as many questions as you can. Now, I'm aware that you guys in year 13 and year 12 right now don't have that many papers to go by, especially from me who sat the A level 7 years ago, where we were in different like times when we had the same specification for the last like decade to like 15 years. But what I'd say is get hold of practice paper questions and go through and practice as you go along with these topics, and make sure you're able to answer these type of questions to good ability, so before you move on to your next topics and stuff like that. Exam technique is key for A level. It's all about getting those specific subject kind of keywords within your answer, and exam technique is key in like structuring it in the right way. So instead of writing 6 lines and spending 5 minutes on a question for 2 marks, I could maybe have 2 keywords within it that would get my, or key phrases that would get me those 2 marks, and I'd write 2 lines and I'd get it done within 1 minute, because I know what the mark scheme is looking for. So you kind of need to know your own notes and the concepts in the textbook, but you also need to know how to play the mark scheme with the type of answers that they require, what keywords they're looking for. And you match all of that by using the same exam board's work. Make sure you cover all the make sure you get a specification criteria from the website of whichever exam board you're doing for A-level chemistry, biology, or math, and make sure you tick down the list, each key topic, and then what the subtopics are within that, and make sure you know about them, and you can literally tick them off as you go along because you know them. That way you know you're covering all aspects of it. So after the 5 minutes of me kind of talking about tips on chemistry A level, overall these topics are some, what I'm saying about chemistry A level, I'd say the same thing for biology and maths that I revise, and for most A levels that I know my friends revise for. You should do it in a similar kind of like methodological way, and make sure you apply active recall so you're not forgetting key concepts or text. Last thing I'd like to say is, don't be overwhelmed when it comes to A-level topics. It's easy for me to say, easier for me to say after going through 6 years of med school, where things are incrementally more difficult than I thought they were going to be. But basically, if you're, hold on 1 second. But yeah, what I was saying is basically, if you can break down your subject topics and chapters, you'll do really well to kind of approach each thing. And what I do a lot of the time is scope the subject and make sure I use the specification criteria to make sure I've covered all these parts to a subject. Okay, Kiana, I really do hope I've answered your question as well as I could there. I don't think I can add any more to it. Let me know on the comments below if that's all right, what you've taken from it. It's a bit too difficult to kind of sum everything up right now, because of the fact that I said so much, but maybe I can sum it up later. Hi, Hamza. Hamza on YouTube. Hi, thank you for your question. How did you revise for chemistry in A level? I was just in the middle of answering that question. So if you pull the stream back, or you rewatch the stream on IGTV Live, I spent about 5 to 10 minutes kind of answering that question. So have a look, and I'll summarize a few things at the end of the stream as well. Okay, so hey guys, thank you for joining us today. So I'm gonna continue answering some questions. So the next question I have is to do with postgraduate medicine, and it says it's from Avyaja. How hard is it to get onto medicine? at a postgraduate level, is it really competitive? Um, I Aviaja, I obviously I got in undergrad, so I'm not too sure how difficult it is. However, I was always aware that it is more competitive in postgrad years in terms of application to position ratios. They get higher. So, for example, in a medical school, out of 300, so like postgrad courses for medical school are more competitive in general. The ones that are more accelerated, like 4 to 5 year ones, a lot of postgrads actually are now applying for the undergrad course, but as postgrads. And they that's less competitive, but still more competitive in terms of application ratios than the undergrad courses. However, that shouldn't discourage you to apply if you're doing the right things when you're like in terms of adding things to your work experiences and your personal statement, and making sure you're getting a very good like undergrad mark, and being versatile. So yes, it is more competitive to get in postgrad than undergrad. But saying that, I know plenty of people that have gotten in now postgrad, and it's just about the quality of your application and the work you put behind it, just like you would in undergrad as well. Whether it's really competitive or not just depends on the med school. So I just strongly encourage you to look at the medical schools council document, as I mentioned before on the stream, about medical schools and their entry requirements. The postgrad ones are there as well as the undergrad ones, and your application to place ratios are also present on it. And where you can sometimes you can apply as a postgrad to undergraduate courses. So that's something to look into. So Hamza, do you suggest using Google Sheets or Anki for active recall? Following the question about chemistry A level, yes, I do definitely suggest using those things. I myself did not have that for my A levels because I don't think Anki was around, and the Google Sheets Ali Abdal active recall methods weren't that clear. However, I was trying my best to kind of do it, and I think most people used revision cards that they made. There's something called Quizlet as well. That's like a nicer format than Anki, but doesn't have the active recall algorithms. I myself, as a medical student, don't actually use Anki just because of the fact that I don't like the formatting of Anki, and it's like I like to always find the macro. Like I'd like to look at the topic in a macro level, so like see all the notes or like work in one go and use questions like question banks as my active recall, or like as I go through my notes, I'm asking myself questions as I go through them, or like writing them out. But yes, so whatever works for you that you've tried in GCSE, and obviously experiment with a few different things when it comes to revision methods. Hope I've answered your question there, Hamza. Cool. Med school's quite stingy giving contextual offers. Ali, that's a good question. I don't know if they are stingy. What I'd say is that contextualized offers are definitely something that all med schools are providing now, especially in the last 5 years. There's been an increase in that. I think it's not that they're stingy. So I don't think they are stingy with it unless they have a cap of how many people they can bring in. I think they are more I think it's just like circumstantial, because the contextualized offers are given to you after your interview, right? So it doesn't mean that if you meet a contextualized criteria, it doesn't mean that they lower your requirements in interview. They will still give you an offer, and then the contextual offer will just come automatically if you meet the criteria of widening participation or contextualized offers. So no, they aren't stingy with it. They don't differentiate you with a contextual offer. The contextual offer just comes about at the end, after they said that they want you at the med school, and they will give you the offer, and then it will be contextual, not just based on what you have in terms of your criteria that you meet. So no, they won't. Hey Cake underscore Joy, thank you for joining us. Medical Lifestyle, thank you for your questions, Ali. They've been brilliant, so keep them coming. Hey guys, so keep your questions coming. Aviaja, you're very welcome. I hope I've answered your question there. Thank you guys, brilliant. Hi Niall, nice to see you. If you have any questions regarding medical school interviews or personal statements or application process or med school live, please drop them below. Yeah, I'd love to answer your questions. If you have any questions about how life is like as a medic right now, or doctors on the ward in the middle of COVID as well, and perspectives, please do feel free to drop them, because we are working in that environment at the moment. Okay, so Paulina, you've asked, do you have any MMI interview tips? My first interview tip, as I've mentioned in previous Q&A sessions, is to get the ISC medical interviews book, because they've got loads of typical interview questions that come up with points that you can look at and kind of like bounce your head around for medical school interviews. Apart from that, general tips would be make sure that you know the format of the MMI by checking the website of the medical school you've applied to and what they say about the MMI. If they've had, so I know some medical schools right now are doing Q&A sessions with online webinar Q&A sessions with prospective applicants, telling them about what adjustments they're making to the MMI now it's online, what they'll include, types of questions. Some medical schools actually give you the MMI stations in terms of topics before you go to them. And so yeah, just get your head around all of that type of stuff and make sure you try and practice MMI style questions, or in a format if you have the opportunity, because that's really important. Practice is key, and make sure you prep really well for it. Make sure you know your medical healthcare news at the moment. Make sure you know how to answer typical questions well and have any idea of how to go about answering these questions. Make sure you add different perspectives, opinion, and debate when answering questions, so people can see your critical thinking ability. And yeah, so those are my medical school MMI interview tips. They're quite generic there, but those are very, very important to make sure you get across, and make sure you prepare very well for it as if it's an exam. Okay, Paulina, I hope I've answered your question there. That was very good. Yeah, so I just answered it. Hopefully that's answered your questions. So I've seen a few more questions come through. So Ali has asked another question. Paulina, yep, hopefully I've answered yours. And Kiana, I'm gonna go on to answering your question, which is a very interesting question indeed. All right, you're very welcome, Paulina. Okay, so Ali, can you suggest ways in which you could develop teamwork skills? Yes, I definitely can. So there's no better way to develop your teamworking skills than by actually, so what I did myself is just get involved in any team working scenario. Not because I specifically was looking at team working skills to improve on, just because I really enjoyed working in a team, working with people, and just using communication skills. So that can be translated in many formats, right? So team working skills could be you being part of a prefect team, you being part of making an assembly with a group of students, for example. It could be working on your work experience, or volunteering and working with a group of people to kind of make something happen, a task, an event. So like, yeah, so I did a lot of things in school where I made or like created events with a team. I learned a lot there, and that's the best way to practice and develop your team working skills, because you make mistakes, especially early on, from like, what are you, like 16, 17, 18, even like up to now where I'm 24. You make a lot of mistakes, but you learn from it a lot by actually just practicing those skills, those communication skills, negotiation, like kind of leadership and teamwork all together. So that's the best way to develop them. The other way is actually finding out what team working skills mean to you. That's you sitting down and kind of brainstorming what type of skills are required within that, because the team working skills encompasses a whole load of different things. The other thing I'd mention is make sure to have a look at like maybe a few blog posts, a few books, or like articles that talk about team working skills and what they are, how to develop them, what to do. So I'd say do some little bit of research, but also more than anything, practice them in any format you can. Any experience is better than none, 100%. Especially with team working, you don't know where you're developing those experiences. Brilliant. So, for example, for myself, I didn't think that. So like, so an example for myself, I did work experience in year 10 in an opticians, or with an optometrist in opticians. It was like a farm. So like, So in the opticians, I was just like, I wasn't doing much. I was just by the reception, answering phone calls, doing some paperwork, greeting customers and stuff. I was really young, and then I also helped like clean around. I did some observing of the optometrists themselves when patients came through. Like, but I worked with the reception team to make sure things happen and as part of a unit. And so, where even though that was a work experience where I was just supposed to shadow the optometrist and learn about like what they do for a living, I actually worked within a team to provide a good experience for the patients that came in through the door. So that wasn't something I thought I'd learn team working skills from. It was quite difficult because I realized quite early on that I didn't want to be doing reception job at an optometrist. And so it was difficult for me, even in those circumstances, using my team working skills there. So that's just an example of how I can spin something like that. Yeah, Paulina, let me know if I've been able to answer your question. So that's great. The next question I have is from Kiana. How many hours do you recommend studying per day? Whew, okay, so that's a very tricky question. Um, I'm guessing you're in A level. Kiana, do you want to just comment below if you're doing A levels right now, or if you're like on a gap year, or if you're doing GCSEs? I'm guessing you're in A level. And if so, whether you're in year 12 or year 13. So I've actually been on Twitter the last few days to see how people aren't enjoying the fact that a lot of medical students are putting up like, oh, live stream YouTube video or like study with me for like 5 hours, 10 hours, 17 hours. Like a lot of jokes are being made about it. And it obviously it just depends how interested you are in a topic, how much time you can put in and you want to put in, and also how difficult you find a subject. So, for example, chemistry was by far my weakest subject, and I knew I had to get a bare minimum of an A grade at A level, which is very difficult for A level subjects. And what I did is kind of spend more hours doing chemistry day to day than my other subjects. So I prioritized based on that. Whilst I did economics for A level that I really enjoyed, but I also found much easier than all my other A level subjects. So day to day, I did not put that much effort in. I probably studied it maybe once a week for a couple of hours just to make sure my notes and my theory were kind of in place. And then closer to the exam time, I stepped up my workload. So, Kiana, what I'd like to ask you is, how long did you spend? You guys didn't even have GCSEs to do, so you can't even say how much you spent doing GCSE work. So, what I'd say is during school time, 9 to 3 o'clock or something like that, or whether you're in college, that's the best time to maximize the hours of work that you're putting towards something. And how many hours is that? 10, 11, 12, 1, 2, 3. That's 6 hours, right? 6 hours of work a day would be very good in school, but just depends how good your school teachers are and how much you take from classwork. I didn't take a lot from my classwork. I did a lot of my work when I went back home by myself, and I went through things. So I spent majority of my evenings, Monday to Friday, studying. So that would be probably what, coming back for by 5. So like I'll be honest, like maybe 5 6 hours a day on top of schoolwork I spent in the evenings studying for my A levels. I probably studied harder than a lot more of my friends. Maybe that was because I was someone who was much more of a hard worker. Maybe I just wasn't confident that I knew my subject topics that well, so I spent more hours working through these things. But yeah, in general, I spent in during A levels 5 to 6 hours in the evening. I tried my best to basically on top of the school day's worth of work. But that's because in the school day I didn't get much out of my work. And then on the weekends I had like I volunteered or I had other things to do on a Saturday, Sunday. But on the weekends I try and do 6 as well when I could. That's something that's just for myself. That gives you an idea of how I worked. That was me in year 12. Maybe I didn't work that hard, especially in term 1, term 2 and 3. I stepped it up because we had AS levels, so exams at the end of year 12. I guess you guys would have mock exams. And then in year 13 I definitely had to step it up because I had interviews, I had personal statement, I had BMAT, UCAT, I had A levels, to do after that. So I was kind of behind by like November, December on my A level. So I had to put in loads of hours of work every day. When it comes to med school, I'll be honest with you, when I've got 2 months before my exam and I've got a lot of work to do, I do try my best to be putting in 10 to 12 hour working days. And I do so quite consistently. That's because I'm motivated, because I know if I don't put those hours in, I'm not going to be able to pass. So hopefully I've given you some ideas of how I think about putting hours in per day for studying. But basically, just do as much as as much as is good for your health, basically, in that sense that you're not driving yourself crazy, you're not burning out, but also make sure you're doing enough. Don't just do like 1 or 2 hours, even though you know you need to spend more on it. Aviaja, great question. Did you ever struggle with confidence before studying medicine? 100% struggled for confidence before. I still struggle for confidence now, but more than anything, it's that I struggled for confidence because I didn't think I was good enough to get into medical school. I myself was from like a state school. I didn't know, and many people who got into medical school, maybe 1 or 2 in years above, but none of my friends or family were doctors or medics. So I didn't know what was required to get in. That's why I worked probably extra hard when it came to like GCSEs and A levels, just thinking that A's and A stars were the only thing that could get you through. And when it came to work experiences, I applied for loads of work experiences and volunteering roles, because I didn't know that if 1 or 2 was enough. I applied for like 10, 11, 12 different things because I just didn't know what. So like I wasn't confident to get in because I didn't know what was kind of required. Things like Medmentor, for example, would have been really helpful, and knowing other medical students in years above, or like if I had a Q&A with my future self, would have been very nice to have, because it would tell you, yeah, you're good enough to get in if you put your working hours in and it's realistic for you. So yeah, I was worried. Kiana, you're very welcome. I'm glad that it was helpful. Aviaja, I hope I've answered your question to an extent there. That was very interesting. All right. The question that I've got next is another aspiring medic. I'll answer that in just a second. I've got one coming through. So how much do GCSEs matter when applying for medicine? GCSEs, okay, so I worked really, really hard for GCSEs, maybe harder than my A levels, just because I thought that was really important. What I'd say is they do matter to a good extent, where you need to get majority A's, A stars, B's. The better your GCSE grades, the better your chance of opportunities to get you into medical school, and that's something I'll come to in just a second. So, like, I think I remember when I applied a long time ago. So you guys work in like 9s and 1s and all of these numbers. So I think what 9 is an A star, 8 is an A star, right? So so what I'd say is obviously aim for the best you can. Aim to make sure aim to aim to ensure that you don't get lower than a B in most subjects, especially the core subjects. So the things that medical schools look for are kind of like minimum requirements for your GCSE grade. So majority of medical schools don't really put emphasis on your GCSEs, right? So if you haven't done very well in them, that's fine, but you have to be realistic going forward. So for example, you need a pass mark, so like a B/C mark. So you need a C mark, which is like I'm thinking now 9876. Was it 6 is a 8 is an A star, 7 is an A, 6 is a B. So like aim for 6s minimum in most of your GCSEs. 5 I think is like a pass, just like a C plus, like something like that. So most medical schools require you to get a C grade in maths, biology, chemistry, maths, sciences, and English, the 2 Englishes, right? And most of them actually require you to get at least a B grade in them, just for you to be considered. Some medical schools require you to get A's in specific subjects like sciences. But those the core subjects are maths, science, and English. They require you to get good grades in them. That's what is most important. The rest of the A levels are important because you need to still meet the criteria for those 10 A levels and 10 GCSE, sorry, and make sure that you get your kind of be A stars in that. Now, what I'd like to say is don't aim for minimum of B's and C's. Aim your best for A's and A stars. The reason why that, so I managed to get basically all A's and A stars in my GCSEs, and the reason why I did that is I thought that I think I looked through like loads of statistics when I applied, when I was thinking of applying, and I saw that the average GCSE mark for most medical schools candidates were like like A's and A stars, basically like maybe 5 A stars and 5 A's, just like off the top of my head. So I was like, okay, I need to at least get that, because you're, even though they have minimum requirements, you're competing against other people, and so if they look at GCSE grades in a holistic application, obviously the higher your grades the better. So for example, I applied to Cardiff University, which at that time they included the GCSE score, that grades that you got in their score to rank you for interview, along with the UCAT. Same thing Nottingham did. Oxford had a real emphasis in GCSE grades. So like obviously if you had good GCSE grades, you were thinking of applying to those type of medical schools. Birmingham back then. Now things have changed. A lot of medical schools don't look at your GCSEs, they just want you to get minimum requirements and kind of rank you from UCAT. But yeah, so look at those requirements for those med schools. And what I'd say is the reason why it's really important to get the best GCSE grades is obviously because GCSEs are a really good grounding before you go into A level for that specific subject. So if you're getting B's and C's in GCSE chemistry, it is very difficult to be aiming for A's and A stars in A level chemistry, just because the jump up is so difficult. And if your foundation is already quite weak, you need to work kind of doubly hard in year 12 and year 13 to get those high marks in A level. I'm not saying it's impossible, it definitely isn't. I've seen people, students, friends, mentees do that. However, you need to have a good grounding, and that's what GCSE gives you, and it kind of translates into grades. The other thing is when applying for work experiences, volunteering programs, summer schools especially, they do look at your GCSE grades, some of them, and they use that as kind of competition to kind of get you through. So for example, I applied to the Unique Oxford Summer School, and even though I had all A's and A stars, I didn't have all A stars, and the only people that got into the medical school, not the medical school, the medicine summer school, were people who had 12, 13 straight A stars. Whilst because I was one or two off that, I only got into the oncology summer school at Oxford. Now that is a very esteemed, difficult summer school to get into, but obviously it was really useful for me, and it was thanks to my GCSE grades that I luckily smashed, because I worked really hard to get into those summer schools. It made a big impact on my personal statement. My whole main part of my personal statement was about that summer school and what I learned from it and what I applied in the work experiences, and I spoke about in an interview. So you basically, what I'm saying there is aim for the best in these things, because you don't know where things will help you more. And it's not all be all or the end all if you don't do well in GCSEs, but you have to get the bare minimum at least and aim for the high one. Hopefully I've answered that question for you, Fatima. I'm sorry I kind of rambled on a little bit. Hi, Paulina. I answered your question just a couple of minutes ago. So if you go back on the live stream, hopefully you'll see it. What other questions do I have? All right, I've got another question. I've got a comment from Avyaja. Avyaja goes, I'm really struggling with self-confidence. Oh, bless you. Thank you for answering that. Any tips for getting volunteer placements medicine related? My tip for that is basically to be as proactive as possible. Email and call as many people that you find links to with these volunteering roles and work experiences, and work hard to kind of get those like networks. Use your networks from your friends, families, organizations, people, like anything that you have, like to try and get these type of experiences and look quite hard, quite well for it. So for example, I got myself work experience with a ENT doctor who was doing his PhD in a research lab in cancer research. And the way I found out was my mum's friend had a friend from primary school back all the way home in like Bangladesh, whose daughter married this guy who was this person I did work experience with. So like it was like basically I don't know these people at all, but through some thinking with my like mom and like through some dumb luck as well, I found that opportunity. I emailed him and I was like, hey, can you bring me along? And that's how I did it. And I encourage you to cold email these type of people to get these work experiences where possible or volunteering roles. There's loads of opportunities for volunteering, especially online right now these days. So have a look at specific charities and organizations that need your help, whether that be like charities like Mind, whether that be charities like Med Supply, I think, that are doing like PPE for medics. People like in AIDS UK, which are organizations looking for people to kind of call elderly, vulnerable people that will get lonely in this time when they're self isolating or in lockdown. There's loads of opportunities for you to just go on Google, have a look, what opportunities are available in the local area, volunteering services kind of near you. So good luck with that. I do appreciate though it's difficult in this time to get these experiences. So yeah, do just try your best, I think. Okay, cool. Next question I have is from another aspiring medic. Another aspiring. That's exactly what it's like having a Bengali for. Yeah, I think um, that's that's what happens a lot of the time. So what kinds of things would I revise for in a numeracy MMI station? Okay, another aspiring medic. I'll be honest with you, there I'm not sure, and I was always very scared about having questions that were to do with numeracy and MMI stations. What I'd say is again recommend the IC medical book if there's anything there. Also have a look online for any like blog posts that talk about it. But all these MMI stations are quite specific when it comes to numeracy and stations as well. So what I'd say is like it would only be generic advice. It would only be kind of you just practicing your math skills closer to the time that you're doing your MMI station, like basically mental math skills. That is very important, and data analysis of like graphs and things like that. So do practice like pulling a graph up that you'd maybe do in biology, chemistry, or in like medical healthcare news and stuff like that, and like graphs, and kind of just talk it through with like a friend or a family member. And like that's the type of data analysis that they're basically looking for, because it's all about kind of just like getting that through with communication skills. So like pull up graphs and stuff like that, practice your mental maths and make sure you're kind of sharp with it, and make sure you're able to translate what you're interpreting well, because that's what they're looking for in a MMI station, communication skills as well as that data processing skill. Sorry I couldn't answer that question better, but those are just a few suggestions. Fatima, you're very welcome. I'm glad I could help. Hi Amira, thank you for joining. Anoni, thank you for your questions. Hi Aisha, and Manar. That's cool. Yeah, good luck with it. Another aspiring medic, because I'll be honest, I've always been scared of mental maths in a high intensity situation, and we do get that in our OSCE scenarios, and my whole brain gets fried, so I don't even know. But practice as much as you can, because when you do that, it will just come to you easier, and that's what I've seen going through med school with these stations. But yeah. All right, next question I have is from Phoebe. Kichuri, thank you for your questions. I'm going to have a look in just a few seconds. So, Phoebe, when did you start preparing for your BMAT and UCAT? So that's a very good question, Phoebe. So when I was in year 12, I started preparing for my UCAT about 6 weeks before the exam itself. So that was kind of like my second week of summer, because I had scheduled it for like second week of September. So like yeah, first or second week. So like the first week of summer, I started just doing a few hours here or there in terms of trying to get my head around the UCAT questions, type of questions that would come up, the actual exam format, the sections, basically scoping the subject of what type of things I need to work through, what resources are out there, what work I need to kind of carry out, familiarizing myself with the UCAT format, because these questions are completely like different to what you've seen before. So yep, I'd encourage you to look at the UCAT website and free online kind of like seminars on YouTube and people talking about UCAT to just introduce you with tips and knowledge on the UCAT. And then the next few weeks, I'd start spending like a couple of hours every day or every other day for like the first for 2 weeks, like kind of starting on practice questions. I think a lot of people like do go on like UCAT courses. They go on and they have like resources that they use and things like that. Some some things you can pay for, some things like you can get like UCAT books. So it just depends how many resources you have and you want to go through. I think quite often people could use Medify, I think, and my mentees definitely recommended that. And then they basically started going through kind of the content for the questions, making sure they had the tips ready and like were able to approach questions well. That's where they started using books as well. That helps you to like find out, like explained, like they had questions and then you'd explain how the UCAT wants you to process that question and explain it. Sorry, I'm getting into loads of details. So for example, so that's what I was saying is like make sure you kind of start mastering the questions and the content 2 weeks before, and then the next 2 weeks to 3 weeks I'd start spending good couple of hours every day. The week before the exam, good like 5, 6, 7 hours working on UCAT work and then doing the exam. So all in all, I'd say spend 4 to 6 weeks. The first few weeks I wouldn't spend too much time on it. It's more about getting your head around the exam, and then start practicing, getting into the flow of it. In the last 2 weeks, really step it up, and that's where most people do really well. And I'd do the exact same for the BMAT, but I'd say just like revise 1 month before. Start revising 1 month before and do the same kind of like the first 2 weeks, start doing questions, get your head around the exam. The next 2 weeks, step it up. In the last week before the exam, step it up even more, just like you do before an A level exam, like revising every single day with loads of work. But I think in future Q&A sessions, I'm sure we'll talk more about UCAT and BMAT resources and things like that. So do look out for that. I'm going to take the last question or two now before we wrap it up. So the question I have is from Kitchery on YouTube. Hey, yesterday I have done my interview. It went well. However, I'm concerned about something. They asked me about a challenge that I had because of COVID-19, because unfortunately my father has tested positive for COVID-19. I said that this is the main challenge that I'm facing right now. It is a problem that I have said that, which is true, or should I have not said that and pointed another challenge that I have had in the past for COVID-19? Kitchery, bless you. I hope the interview went really well yesterday, and your answer was fine. That's a good answer, because that's something that's truthful and something that's honest for you, and that's the best thing to do in an interview. Maybe if they looked for something else, they would have suggested it, but at the end of the day, that is definitely a valid challenge of COVID-19. Having loved ones suffer from the illness is very difficult to get through mentally. It would be quite difficult, as well as the fact that you have the resolve to get through it, and you obviously have empathy there because you're talking about someone who's a patient, who is your dad, kind of going through that difficulty. So that probably came through very well in the interview. And so I'd say well done on answering that question. I wouldn't worry at all by it. That is something that we would recommend as a good answer, because that's truthful to you. So yeah, well done, and good luck with your application. Hopefully it's gone well. Kitria, hopefully I've reassured you there. Don't stress too much about your interviews and stuff that you've done, because what's done is done, and well done for getting through it and getting that interview. Phoebe, you're very welcome. Yeah, one thing I'd say about revising for UCAT and BMAT, don't spend months and months and months like some people might tell you to do so. It's a matter of kind of like 4 weeks to 6 weeks revising for it, and that's kind of what I've seen with all my medical student friends, as well as mentees, as well as myself. So yeah, you're very welcome, Kishori. You're very welcome. Cool. Hamza, Kishori, thank you very much for your questions. Thank you, Phoebe. Thank you, another aspiring medic, as per usual. Every week you're joining in. Thank you, Fatima. Thank you, Amira, Paulina, Kiana, Chili, Aja, Ali. Thank you for joining in. I really appreciate your questions. Hopefully I've been of some help today through Medmentor. We do try our best to kind of get you guys into med school and prepare you as well as we can through our applications and the process. So do keep involved with us. Have a look at our Instagram channel where we upload every week. We've got blog posts on the actual Medmentor website. We've got resource lists and stuff like that. They're really, really good. And the whole Medmentor team work tirelessly to make that happen for you. So let us know what we can kind of help you with and give us some comments. Hopefully you've enjoyed this weekly live session. We'll be back again next Saturday at 6 p.m. So do bring your questions. It's a Q&A as per usual, anything to do with the medical school application process and medical school in general. So please do join me for then. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for joining me, all of you guys. And if you have missed out on a few things that I've spoken about today, please do go on the IGTV live of this that we've put up. Have a look on that and go back. And we've done a few other live sessions, I think 6 or 7 others. Have a look back at what we've discussed already, and hopefully they'll be of benefit to you as well. So thank you guys so much. Hopefully you all have a lovely week, and all the best to you and your families in difficult times. Stay safe, take care, and I'll see you next week. Thank you guys. Bye bye.